It's a brooch, an earring, a pendant, jewelry for your hair. Twisted from wire and adorned with gemstones or pearls, you'll want to wear them everywhere. Learn how to make pins that can easily be converted into other pieces of wearable wire art today in Jewel School. Hi, welcome to Jewel School. My name is Dale Cougar Armstrong, and in today's class, I'm going to teach you how to make some lovely new wire jewelry designs. You know, with all of us wearing more handmade items these days, scarves and shawls, learning how to make your own brooches and pins, pretty smart move. But besides teaching you how to make these pins, I'm also going to show you how to convert them into earrings, pendants, and even jewelry for your hair. Today you'll learn how to create this spring-style brooch embellished with loops and curls, sculpt vines and attach pearls to fashion a hairpin, and add a snap-set gemstone to create this versatile design I like to call Gaia's Eye. Before we begin making our projects, we need to gather the tools that we're going to use. So let's get together the 4 basic tools to begin with, meaning your flat nose pliers. Of course, we're using wires, so you need wire cutters, round nose pliers, and for the chain nose pliers, I'm going to be using 2 different pair. Okay, you see I have my snub nose, and I also have the fine point. So chain nose pliers. And these tools are extra, they're not necessary, but most of you as intermediate students already have them. We have these 6-step, round, or multi-size looping pliers. And I also have 2 pair of the double barrel bail pliers in both the large and the small sizes. These will help with a lot of the shaping that we might be doing. We're also going to be doing a little bit of hammering. So today I have with me my favorite texture head on my 9-faced hammer. And I have my favorite chasing hammer. This one has both a smooth side and a slightly domed head that we'll talk a little bit about when we get to that point. Now, because we're going to be hammering, of course, we need a bench block. You might need some tape, we might not, we'll have to see, but it's good to have it on hand. I'm also going to be talking to you a little bit about using an emery board, an arkenstone, which is a type of sharpening stone with a fine to coarse grit, and just a regular sharpening stone with both a fine on one side and a coarse grit on the other. Now, of course, we always need an ultra-fine marking pen, and you'll need a ruler, as well as your favorite work surface. I happen to prefer a cushion-style mouse pad, but I'm sure you have your favorite. And you'll see I always use a piece of t-shirt or a small piece of polishing cloth to protect my fingers while I straighten my wire. Now, in case our eyes start to go bad, and because of the fact that when we're working with shiny metals, the reflection of light can play havoc with your eyes and you can make optical changes, I'm going to have my optivisors on hand in case I need them, as well as I have 2 pair of cheater glasses here. Now, not only does this help me see what I'm doing, but it also acts as a protection for my eyes, because if we shoot a small piece of wire off into the air, we don't want it going into our eyes. Okay, so now that you've gathered all of your tools, let's begin with project number 1. As I go through each project, I'm going to tell you what types of wire, including gauges, hardnesses, and shape, as well as beads, gemstones, and other options that we'll be using for each project. Now, the first brooch or pin that we're going to be making today, I like to call the Gaelic curl. And the reason being, these swirls that you see are fun to make. They really give character to the design, and I'd like to tell you a little bit more about them while I cut the wire. Okay, we're going to be using, for today's project, 14 gauge, dead soft, round wire. Now, the reason that I am choosing a 14 gauge is because I'm going to be making a larger pin. I'm going to show you some examples of the same design done in smaller gauges later. And as you know, a lot of our handmade items today, shawls, stoles, pashmina, it doesn't matter what you call it, they have very large loose weaves. So it's kind of fun to have a larger ornamental pin, such as the one we're going to make, that is going to work with those types of items. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to cut 12 to 14 inches of wire. Now, if you're going to make something smaller, like this first one, okay, you're going to be using about 12 inches of wire. If you want to make something a little bit longer, such as the ornate one that I have here, let's use about 14 inches of wire for this one. And then as you make these and go through them, you'll find that you can make these adjustments yourself, and you'll be able to cut back or increase the length of your wire. So I've just straightened, measured, and cut one piece of my round wire. Remember, this is 14 gauge, dead soft. And I'm going to now begin to teach you how to make our pin. So the first thing we're going to do when we make our pin is we're going to begin by making the catch or the clasp right here, okay? And if you can see that, right, that's what we're going to begin with, is making that right there. This is what our pin is going to attach to. So to do this, of course, I'm going to need to put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm also going to be using my 2 pair of chain nose pliers. And before I start, let me show you right here. Okay, this is where I have actually double cut my wire so that I don't have a burr. I'm going to use my snub nose pliers on the very end of this wire, and I'm going to grab the tip, firmly hold it, and roll the end toward the length of the wire. Okay, and that forms this nice little loop right here. Now, the second part I'm going to make, you can use either your double barrel bell pliers or you can use your 6-step loopers to do this. I'm going to use my 6 steps, and I'm going to choose to use the second largest, or second smallest rather, step right here. Okay, I'm going to place that on the inside of my wire immediately after the loop that I just made, and I'm going to roll the wire again. So that I have the exact lock that we just looked at. Now from here I'm going to use my flat nose pliers, and I'm going to place these so that they are about 2 millimeters below the top of the curve on the flat wire. So let's see, that's 2 millimeters right there. Okay, and I'm simply going to use my finger to bend this wire 90 degrees with my pliers. All right, and there we have made the catch for our pin. Mine's a little wonky. Let's kind of straighten him out. There we go. Okay, so now we get to do the fun stuff. Okay, I'm going to use a combination of my pliers and my different shaping tools. I'm going to start making my loops, and then we're going to flatten them and texture them, and we're going to add some beads. So let's grab our shaping tools. Again, I'm going to start with my 6-step rounds, for which you can also use your bail pliers. And whereas this is the front, okay, I'm going to begin by placing my tool immediately above the eye that I just made. Now, it doesn't really matter what size you start on. I'm going to start on kind of like a middle shape, a middle size. I'm going to wrap this wire around my tool. Okay. And let's remove it. You see where we're going with this. Okay, replace the same location, and let's continue wrapping it all the way around. And now you see we have the full loop. Okay, so now I'm going to continue making several more loops in different sizes, working up the stem of my piece, and then we're going to hammer a little bit. Now, if you see how I put this one on, we see that it's a little bit sideways. And that's the nice part about using these looping pliers, is you can move your rings wherever. So I'm going to use my flat nose pliers and simply adjust my loop. There we go. And now it's time to give these a little bit of strength. So I'm going to put them onto my bench block. And I'm going to use my chasing hammer. Now, when I introduced these hammers, I told you, this one happens to have a half dome side, and it also has a flat side. One of the challenges that people have is when they are chasing their work, they end up with dents in their wire and they want to know why. Well, it's because they were using the flat side. If you will use the slightly domed side, you won't have the opportunity to make dents. That is, of course, unless you want them. So I'm going to use the slightly rounded head on my chasing hammer. I'm going to place my lock so that it sits on the outside of my bench block, so I'm not going to be hammering it. All right, and I'm just going to chase these a little bit, kind of flatten them on their curves to give them some shape and some form. Now, after I have that done, you're going to notice I'm going to chase just a little bit, maybe a half an inch of the remaining straight wire coming up to be ready to put my beads on. Let's make it a full inch. Okay, so that's good. Let's kind of work hard in this a little bit, but we need some more. So let's use our texturing hammer. And I have chosen the head with the cross-hatch diamond design. I really kind of like the effect that that gives on a heavier gauge wire, such as this 14 gauge. So again, I'm going to go back onto my piece with my bench block using my texture side. Let's put a little bit of extra shine in here. Okay, not a whole lot. You really don't need a lot. Just enough to kind of give it that diamond type cut, that diamond shine. All right, so now, believe it or not, I'm going to put this back on my block, but I'm going to put my work pad right over this because I don't want to diminish the texturing I did, but I do need to harden it a little bit on the back. So putting this on its back side, okay, with the texture facing down, being protected by my mouse pad, I'm going to use, again, the rounded head on my chasing hammer, and I'm going to give it just a few little taps. So that I further work hardened it. And there we go. That's pretty darn hard now. That's about where we want it. So let's take some beads. Now you can use anything that you really want to. You can use large hole gemstone beads, which is what I've used on this piece, okay? I used some natural banded onyx with large holes. Okay, you can use large hole freshwater pearls. And today, I really like lampwork beads. Okay, I have these really lovely lampwork beads. They have some dichroic glass in them. So I'm going to use a few of these. Now, I call these button beads because they remind me of the buttons on the back of a bride's dress or the buttons on an old-fashioned shoe. It's probably not even the real name, but I'm going to call them button beads today. And I like to use them because, as you see, when they fall down, they kind of stack. And there's almost no bad way to put these beads on, and they will actually fall the way you want them to. And I kind of like the lavender. So let's see, we can put another one on. All right, so you can use whatever beads that you like. And now I'm going to come back up here. Again, I'm going to use my 6-step rounds, and I'm going to continue making some more Gaelic curls to the other end, and then we're going to make the actual spring part of our pin. You know what? I think instead of using my 6-step rounds, for those of you who are using the double barrel bail, let me show you how you can use those today. Using the smaller side of the larger double barrels, I think that's where I'm going to start. And where I have already ended my last ring here, I think working opposite diagonals, I'm going to start my ring at the top on the opposite side. You see how much fun these are? You can make your curls go wherever. Now watch this. Okay, see how this is just a little bit higher? And I want that down there. I'm just gonna put this back in and roll it down. Look at that. You can adjust your settings here with these pliers simply by rolling it wherever you want. Okay, coming up to the top, I think I'm gonna put one more small one on here. So let's use the larger barrel on the small double barrel bale pliers and put our last little loop right there. Again, it might be a little bit far, so remember, you can just roll this down to where you want it to be. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's take this back to the bench block and let's texture and chase the same as we did before. There we go. Okay, and it even starting to get that little curve that we need. So let's finish by making our little spring bar for the pin. And for this, you're going to use your round nose pliers. Those of you who've worked with me before, if you have my book Wire Work, you know that I like to use the same sizes all the time with my round nose pliers. So what I've done is I've taken a diamond file and I made my own scores in my tool so that I can use the same markings every single time and there's never a problem with repetition of size using round nose pliers. So I'm going to come up here to the largest section and my spring is going to be made in a circular motion headed toward the back of the piece. Okay, so let's put this right here. And this is kind of fun because again, using my round roll, I can roll my pin, okay, and then I'm going to grab my tail, make it come around. Okay, let's replace our pliers, bring it back down again. And you see how we form kind of like a spring here? Okay, that spring is actually what's going to hold our pin together. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to have to chase this just a little bit. And that's one of the reasons why using a heavier gauge like this, this is why this type of a pin is best for a loose weave. You don't want to force this through silk because number one, it's kind of heavy. Number two, it's going to really damage those weaves. So let's take this and let's just chase this pin a little bit using the rounded side. Oh, by the way, chase. I mentioned I was going to tell you a little bit about that. Do you notice how I'm going down and out? I'm actually chasing the wrinkles out and chasing the curve out. So if you think chasing hammer, think chasing. Go down and out. That way you're not hitting on an angle. Okay, that looks good, and that's gotten harder. Okay, so this is going to be our spring pin. You see how it snaps right in there. And now I have to finish the pin part itself. To do this, I like to use really sharply angled cutters, okay? And I'm going to place this on a really wicked sharp angle right here. Okay, you see that right there. And let's cut that. Right, and you see. Now, from here, that pinpoint has got to stay pretty darn sharp, and it's going to have a burr. All right, I don't know if you can see that burr or not right there. But whenever you cut wire, you're really not cutting wire, you're separating molecules. So you're always going to have a burr of some kind. Even the most expensive flush cutters don't cut flush. There's always something there that's pinched. It might just be less noticeable. So when we cut like this, we have pinched this wire so closely together that it actually broke apart. And that's how you kind of cut wire. So I will have this little burr, and I don't want that to catch on clothing. So this is where I'm going to use an emery board. Okay, and just go over in the direction of the pin, just enough to take that burr off. All right, there we go. Now let's go ahead and straighten this out because we've kind of messed it up while we were working with it, which is okay because it's only making it work hardened a little bit more. All right, and let's press this down, close it up. All right, now looking at this, I can say, oh, I need to adjust that right there just a hair because we kind of want that to be straight. Of course, you don't have to. And I might want this to come down a hair. We have just finished our Gaelic curl pin brooch. We've used some really pretty lampwork beads, and the nice part about this is, as I showed you here before and told you about earlier, we can do it with a short piece of wire, we can do it with a long piece of wire, you can make it with a smaller gauge wire, and look at this. Check it out. Let's use the same idea and use a smaller gauge wire and make a pair of Gaelic curl ear pins. Okay, and you notice that these are made mirror image to match one another. I've put some large hole pearls on there, and if I turn these around, you'll see, okay, it's done the exact same way. I left off the spring at the top, and the clasp comes into the bottom. Now I do have to share with you something special here. Okay, these were made using a 21 gauge square wire. You might say, Dale, why'd you use 21 gauge square? Well, you can use a 20, 21, 22, even a 24 gauge wire as long as it's a half hard. Number one, if it's square and you twist it, you're actually making slipless earrings. Think about that. They will not slip out because the twisted wire keeps them from coming out. People charge a lot of money in jewelry stores to actually buy earrings like that. You can make your own. So we have our ear pins. Our set designer thought that they were miniature pins. Wouldn't that be cool? You can make a set of little designer pins, like scatter pins. And think about this. How wonderful would this look in hair? Okay, think about a chignon. Okay, you know, like a French twist that's spun up, and then you slip this down in there, and now we also have hair jewelry. So we have convertible brooches, number one, the Gaelic curls pin. And next, I'm going to teach you how to make twining vines. Twining vines. You know, most often when I design something, I don't name it. However, when I started sculpting and making these leaves for a show I was doing in Switzerland to create shawl or stole pins, this name just came to me. So our next project is going to be learning how to sculpt this wire, and then I'm going to show you that you can even embellish it if you'd like with something like this large, beautiful Baroque freshwater pearl. Okay, so we're going to learn several different techniques, and then we're going to discuss how this design can be used in a variety of jewelry ways. So the first thing, as usual, I need to cut my wire. Now, this can be made in any gauge that you would like. I find that by using a 12 or 14 gauge, I'm going to have something nice and substantial, meant for holding a cloak together. If you want something a little more fine, so you want to take it down to a 16 gauge. If you get down to as small as an 18, yeah, I'm not really sure that it's going to hold up. You might want to switch from a dead soft to a half hard wire. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply straighten, measure, and cut one piece of 14 gauge round dead soft wire, because it's easier for you to see when I teach on camera when I use a heavier gauge. You probably don't need more than about a foot, so I'm going to measure and cut just a 12-inch piece. Now, the stick part of my pin right here, we figure that out after we've created our actual vine. So let's use our wire and tools and begin to sculpt our twining vines brooch. Okay, and here's where we can both use either and or our 6-step multi-size looping pliers, or 6-step rounds, or we can use our double barrel bail pliers. So I'm going to show you how to use both tools when creating your leaves. We're also going to be using our flat nose pliers. So to begin making our leaves, I'm going to start at the very top. Now you'll notice here that I have double cut this end. And when I say double cut, let's just go ahead and do it. That means that everything from the flat side up on my tool that I'm going to keep. Therefore, if I double cut this here, it gets rid of any burr that I may have had. Okay, so there's no burr whatsoever on the end of that wire. Now to make my leaf, I'm going to use my flat nose pliers to bend my wire down, I would say approximately about 1.75 inches. So let's see. Okay, that's a 90-degree angle. And I've got 1.75 inches. Okay? To shape your leaf, think about what a leaf looks like. What kind of leaf do you want to make? You might want to try just doing what I'm doing first, and then later on your second one, you can make elongated leaves. You can add little spikes to the end. There's nothing you can't do with these tools. Okay, so I'm going to use my 6-step rounds to start, and I need to make a curve into the bottom of my wire right here to reflect the bottom of my leaf. So let's place this and use my finger to just press that on its way. Okay, and there we have the beginnings. Now I'm going to decide where I want the point or top of my leaf to be and use my flat nose pliers to take this wire down. And again, I'm going to use my multi-size or 6-step rounds to add the curve that I need to the bottom of my leaf. Okay, now you see this little tail I've left? That means that this is going to be the front of my pin, and the back is going to be where I'm going to grab this tail using my chain nose pliers. I'm going to use the snub nose here because I have a larger surface. And I'm going to grab the end of this and roll it toward the back. Now notice as I'm rolling that, I'm actually taking off the end. And let's arrange that here and press that down and tuck it in. All right, so we have made our first and topmost leaf right there. May not look that much like one, but if you press this down now with your flat nose pliers, let's put it right on our work surface. Slide my flat nose pliers in about 1/8 of an inch and kind of pinch. Okay, did you see that? There we go. Now that's my first leaf. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to make continuing leaves down the vine. To hold my space, I'm going to use the width of my flat nose pliers. Now you, as an intermediate student, know pretty much the widths of your tools, and often you'll know that I use them as placeholders because it saves time not having to use a ruler. So I'm going to use the width of my flat nose plier jaw to hold the space that I need between my first top leaf, down the stem, and the second leaf that I'm going to put on. And to do that now, I'm going to hold this right here, and I'm going to simply bend my wire to the side. Okay, and right there we have the beginnings of another leaf. So repeating this, and now I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to use the double barrel bail pliers, just because I want you to see how you can use these too. Okay, again, I'm going to place my smaller barrel at the bottom of my leaf, roll the wire, giving me an idea of my leaf shape. Use your flat nose pliers to determine how long you want your leaf to be. Hold your space, make a 90-degree angle. And then let's press this down with our fingers. And coming back into our leaf shape, we're going to use, let's use the large barrel on the smaller double barrel bail pliers. Yeah, try to say that 6 times fast. Okay. And while I'm here, there's my leaf. Let's pull it in a little bit. And now I'm going to wrap this once around. Remember, this is the front, which I determined by the wrap that I made with my first leaf here. Okay, and I'm going to wrap this around, holding on to the shape that I made because it's still kind of soft. I haven't textured it yet. Okay, now once I get that around, I'm going to firm that by using my flat nose pliers. Just to firm that up. Now, I know this kind of looks a little funny because I have my first leaf and my second one's a little wonky. So let's bring our stem down. Now I can bend my leaf up. And now you'll see that is starting to look more like a vine. Well, let's add some shape to this leaf. Remember, place it on your flat work surface and use your flat nose pliers to grab the end and add some shape to your leaf. You see I kind of curved that one right there. Now we're looking more like a leaf. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue shaping these leaves as I go down. And then afterwards, hopefully you'll be doing yours as well. Okay, so right now, what we have here is practically our entire vine about finished, okay? However, wherever we're going to put our stick pin, it's going to go through the top leaf or maybe a side leaf, and it's going to want a curve or a curl or something to go through. Now, if you'll notice on the larger one I made here in gold as a sample, by the way, I used 12 gauge wire with this one, okay, you'll notice that I put just a loop at the very end. Well, on the one that we have today, because I was so involved in teaching you how to make all these different little leaves with all three tools, I didn't leave a very long stem. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to curve this around, and then afterwards we're going to texture this and harden it, so it's really not going to make a difference that it's not a complete loop. Now, to do my curve, again, I can use any manner of the round tools that I have here. And let's see, yeah, you have to remember that whatever shape you're going around, the resulting image is going to be just a little bit bigger than the original shape due to the spring in the wire, even if it is dead soft. So let's try here. That looks about good. Yeah, and we're going to give this a little bit of a curl. Oh, I could make a full loop. Nice. You never know. Okay, perfect. So now it's off to the bench block. And I'm going to first use my chasing hammer. Remember, I like to use the domed side rather than the flat side, because in that way, I'm not going to be denting my wire except for where I want to dent it. And I'm going to start this by hammering on the front of my piece. I'm going to flatten down some of my leaves to give them a little bit of dimension and work harden this. Now, as you go, it's your choice as to how much you want to flatten or where you want to texture your curls, okay? So I like to do mine on the outside edges. I rarely do it on the tips, but that's totally up to you. Okay, so as we can see right here, if you look at this piece, do you see how it's kind of bent? That's because as we are chasing the metal, we are actually hitting it down and we're stretching it. So when we stretch it, it has to have a place to go, and it will start to raise on the sides. This is what we used to call raising bowls when I actually worked with thick copper, and I used to raise bowls from a sheet of copper. Using those same techniques is how we can get this to happen here. Now, we do need a curvature on this pin. However, this is the front. I don't want to curve to the front. So that means that I'm going to have to do this again on the back. Okay, much better. Now I have my curve, however, I don't have my texture. So you see how all of these things kind of play together. So I'm going to place this on my block again, and using, again, my favorite diamond crosshatch texturing head on my hammer. I'm going to give this a little bit of a diamond effect. Now you don't have to, as you can see by the one I did in gold. Sometimes I just like to leave it plain because, yeah, it depends on my mood. It depends on what I want to feature. But today I want to share with you how to add texture. So let's go ahead and add some texture to our vine. And notice I'm not texturing everything, and I'm not hitting too hard. If I were to hit too hard, let me tell you, the way that these are cut would actually break my wire. This will go down far enough that it will separate those molecules just as though you used a pair of cutters. There we go. Okay, I'm happy with that right now. Okay, it has enough of a diamond effect to it that it's kind of a little bit sparkly. And what I need to do now is I need to go back in, and you see where my beginning vine end here, I wrapped it around. Well, it ended up looking like it was coming back off. So let's use our tools. I'm going to use chain nose pliers in this case, my blunt nose, because it is a heavier wire, and because I have hardened it and textured it. So I don't want to fight with it. I'm going to use the right tool for the right job. And I'm just going to go back in here and pinch this back together where it needs to be put. Okay, that's easy. And let's look now at the front. All right, I've got my loopies going on. I've got my leaves. Are my leaves where I want them? Probably not. So let's move them. Okay, let's just grab onto this and let's just move the end of that. And I have moved that leaf. Okay, let's move this one. Yeah. Mother Nature knows how she wants her plants to grow. So do I. Okay. All right, so now let's give our plants a little bit of 3-dimension. So by using the small double barrel bale pliers, I'm going to add some dimension, some 3D effect by giving my leaves some life. Okay, let's curve this one in a little bit. And then let's take it back out. See the difference there? Definitely some difference. Okay, and let's bring this leaf, let's make this one fluff a lot in the front. Yeah, in order to do that, I have to put my big barrel on the back and roll my piece. Now let's come here and bring it back. Okay, you see how that really makes that come alive? I mean, these leaves look like that they're climbing vines, imagine that. Okay, to further decorate this, you can continue doing this as much as you want, or as little, or you don't have to do it at all. That's really a funky shaped leaf. We're gonna have to do something with him. I know. I'm going to hide him and make him a base for something very special. Now, normally I wouldn't do this. It just happened to happen on camera. But if we look at the piece that I have here, okay, let's look at this piece I have right here, all right, done in argentium. It's a large freshwater Baroque pearl that I put on there, okay? I actually planned that design. This one today, I didn't plan, which is like even more fun because you get to do it with me. So I'm going to take and I'm going to hide my really kind of funky leaf with a pearl. Now, to do that, I'm going to add some 26 gauge wire to our list. This is 26 gauge round. It can be dead soft, it can be half hard, it really doesn't matter. When wire gets this small, the only difference between the two is if you manipulate a half hard wire a lot, it's going to snap. Your dead soft wire is going to be a little bit more forgiving. So let's go ahead and just straighten this, protecting my fingers. You probably noticed I have a few bruises. I have a new dog. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to take a piece of this. It's not that expensive. I'm probably going to use maybe 5 inches of wire, and I may not use all of it. Oh, okay, I lied, 6. So I've cut a piece of wire about 6 inches long, and I'm going to choose a pearl, and I've got these really pretty elongated pearls right here. The problem with these is they don't have large holes like the white ones that we now have. So I have to use this 26 gauge wire. Now let's see if I can find a pearl that it's going to take the wire. Knowing how things are drilled really helps. Oh, I lucked out, look at that. Went straight on, absolutely perfect. Often I will pick up a pearl I really like and I kind of like got my heart set on it and I can't use it because the wire won't go all the way through. If this had not been through, here's a little tip. I could have taken a piece of square 26 gauge wire, twisted it, and then worked it as a drill to open up the center of my pearl. Just a little extra cougarism for you. Okay, so we have this ugly leaf, or I think it's ugly, and I have my pearl on a wire. So now if I do this, that's kind of going to hide that. Oh, I can do that. I like that. Yeah, I like that. So now I have determined where I'm going to put this, and I'm going to fold my wire over on one end. Ta-da! And I probably have too much wire. I do. Okay, here's a formula for you. Length of pearl plus 2 inches. That is the length of the 26 gauge wire that you should use. And yes, I will also add that to your written directions. And you've just learned with me on camera. So using my chain nose pliers, I'm going to take my round wire and I'm going to slowly tease it. Put a little curve in there and another one. Move it further up and another one. You see what's happening with this wire? It's starting to go around. It's going to be perfect. Okay, and let's twist that through one more time. There we go. This is my tease, curve, and connect method. Okay, so after I have this through where I want it, I can then pull my wire. And chances are I'm not going to break it as easily because I haven't kinked it. I kind of curved it and teased it and made it go around. All right, so let's put that one there. Oh yeah, that's pretty. So I have this wrapped around once just because I kind of like needed to stabilize it. And I'm going to put this end right around the stem. This is going to be easy because I can do this with my hand. And let's just wrap this tightly about 3 times. Now as I'm coming back up, okay, I'm going to grab my pliers and pull really tightly. Okay, now I'm going to trim the end about 1/16 of an inch away from my wrap on the top. So now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm going to grab the end and I'm going to roll it this way, which is going to tuck this end into the wraps I've already done. Okay, so here it is. There's the end. I'm going to just roll my tool and then just tuck. Okay, and it's perfect. That's like in there. So now I can slide my pearl down, grab onto the other end. Remember, we had locked it in, pull it through, and using my tool, it's easier than my fingers. I'm going to repeat the same process. Okay, I'm going to wrap this on about 3 times. Now coming back up around for the last time. Oh, nope, it decided it wanted to break right there. That's fine. Okay, there's the end. So I'm going to grab my end because it ended on the back and I don't want it there. Okay, I'm going to pull it. And now I'm going to trim it on the front. And then I'm going to roll this back down, just like this. Okay, so now I have no sharp edges. My pearl is in. Ta-da! There you go. So the last thing that we need to do to make this design work is to figure the stick that goes in. Okay, so by using my ruler to measure, I know that I want my stick pin to come through about at least 1/2 inch. Let's plan 3/4 because we have to cut that. And let's come out the top. So that would mean, let's say 3/4. Now we're about 3. Let's move it up to 3 1/4. And we also want to put a leaf on the top. And our leaf is going to take up about 1 inch, probably no, I'd say more like 1.5 inches. So now we're up to 4 1/4, so let's say 5 inches. So I'm going to now straighten, measure, and cut one piece of my 14 gauge wire that is 5 inches long, okay? Okay, and I'm going to start by doing my leaf. Now we know that the leaf should be about, let's say 1 1/4 inches, but you know what? Wait a minute, let's go back. I can't do that first, can I? I have to figure out how long my piece has to be. So let's insert this into our pen from the leaf, through the curve, and guess what I find out? I can't get it through because I forgot to shape my pin. All of your pins need to be shaped with a slight arch, kind of like a rainbow arch, going up in order to gather the fabric underneath, just like that. Okay, do you see that? That's really a slight arch there. Okay. And I'm going to take my pin now and put it through the leaf and then down through the stem. And this is going to make a big difference because you might say, geez, Dale, 5 inches, you want to make a leaf? You didn't leave enough wire. Well, that's because I knew I was going to arch it like that. You see that arch right there? Okay, this is going to gain me a little bit more wire. So actually, yeah, a leaf is going to take about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, depending on the size you want to make. This is where you're going to gain your extra wire. So now that I have that, I know where my leaf needs to begin. By putting this through, my leaf needs to begin about here. Okay, so I'm going to make my 90-degree angle with my flat nose pliers. And then again, I'm going to shape my leaf by using whatever size rounds I feel I want. Let's go with the 4th smallest or 3rd largest on the 6 steps. I like that. That's pretty good. Bring him up a little bit. Out. Yeah, I'm going for a different look here. All right, and let's repeat that on the other side. Knowing that I want to leave a little bit so I can wrap the end around the stem. That's about right. Okay, I'm using the blunt or snub nose chain nose pliers. Let's grab the end and make a curve. Let's connect that around the stem. And then let's use our flat nose pliers to firm it up. There you go. Okay, so what do we do next? Well, of course, you have to shape this, texture it, and chase it, make it harder. Okay, now we do have to chase the bottom, but we don't want to texture that because if we texture this, it's going to grab onto fabric. So go ahead and chase both sides at least twice, maybe 3 times, until it is hard as you think is necessary to be able to go through and not fold when you're using this as a pin. Okay, I think I'm about done, except I've got that little niche right there. And remember, we use the snub nose chain nose pliers to press that back into position. So let's do that because I don't like loose ends. There we go. And firming that up. Okay, that works. Okay, I might want to give my leaf a little bit of life. Give your leaf life. Just a little. Okay, and now I can take this and slide it down, and this becomes my extra leaf. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this becomes our 6th leaf. Let's slide it right through the top leaf and out through the bottom. And see how long we need this to be. So that's actually quite a good length, really. So let's go ahead and finish up the pin, and that's very easy. So let's use your wire cutters to cut this at an angle, very sharp angle. Remember that we have a burr, and you can use the emery board, or you can use sharpening stones. My husband actually did these for me, and he just picked up regular old sharpening stones, and then he put them on the diamond saw and cut them into little pieces, parts. So I have one side has a fine grain and one side has a coarse. So in using something like this, I'm going to use the coarse to first remove the burr. Same as though you were doing your nails, folks. Always in one direction. And then I'm going to use the fine side. And the fine side is just going to smooth out what I just did. Okay, and let's clean that off. There you go. No more burrs. That's definitely sharp. Okay, so if we take this and slide this from our top leaf through the bottom curl, okay, we have just finished our twining vines and embellished it with a freshwater pearl. Now, before we move on to the next project, I do want to share a couple of other things with you. All right, imagine this. Yeah, and this one's silver and it's got a pink pearl. Picture somebody with really beautiful dark hair, okay? And let's put it up and let's use this as a barrette, okay? Think about that looking at this larger one. Okay, remember the stick barrettes? You know, put this over the back of your hair and then weave the other leaf through it, and now we have a piece of hair jewelry. But that's not all. Oh my goodness, imagine this. Okay, you could take this off and you can also wear this just as a plain pendant. Okay? I mean, look at that. It would make a really lovely pendant. So now we have a pin, we have hair jewelry, and we have a pendant. If you use a smaller gauge wire, let's say let's use an 18 to a 20 gauge, you will actually be able to make yourself a pair of earrings to match. And then last night I did this because this is a way cool idea, okay? Remember the family pins? Your mother or grandmother had the mother's brooch and it was always a circle and it had stones and things in it. Why not take something like this and make it a more useful piece of jewelry? It can be worn at least 3 different ways. And let's go ahead and insert pearls and crystals. You can do them birthstones, anniversaries. You can do them, oh my goodness, those are my favorite colors, like I did, obviously. You see the emerald and pearl? That's Dale. Okay? And this is done with a snap set. You see that? That little setting right there, you can set tiny stones and incorporate them into your wire jewelry designs. Oh yeah, but I hadn't shown you how to do that yet. So in our next project, I'm going to show you how to use a snap set too. I hope you've enjoyed making twining binds. The next piece I'd like to tell you about is called Gaia's Eye. And I kind of came up with the name, yes, I did that myself, after I made the piece. So first let's look at the piece right here. I have this displayed being shown to be used as to how to hold a shawl or a stole, okay? Makes a really lovely scarf piece. Due to the way that this is being used right here, you can see this would make a lovely substitution for a stick barrette. Instead of the leather with the stick, we actually have precious metal wire, and my center is this lovely 8mm CZ. So let me tell you a little bit about how I designed this piece and where it came up with its name. Gaia's Eye actually came when I was trying to make a smaller version of the pendant, which I'm actually wearing right now, okay? And I was doing a lot of different birthstones. I was getting, again, ready for my show in Switzerland, and I was making things like this to take with me. So I decided to try to make a smaller version. And this kind of happened. I had wire left over, and I said, oh geez, let me put a leaf on that. You know, my leaf link from the Jumpstart series. Well, when I was finished, I ended up with what you see here with an empty hole, which you can see on the back, that I needed to fill. And I just happened to have an 8mm CZ sitting on my workbench. So I put that all together. Now, yes, it looks like an eye. Yes, it looks like it could be crying or ready to tear up. Or, as my producer said, to her it reminded her, looking at it this way, of a mother figure holding its baby. So there we have Gaia's Eye, which I named for the eye and the tear, and that my producer confirmed by saying it was a mother holding her baby. So, you know, different things happen, and it's always for a reason, even if we don't understand what it is. Now, besides making a beautiful pendant the way it is, okay, or making the pendant which originated it, all right, you can also check out the earrings that I have on today, because these earrings came as a result of the exact same experiment. So, you know what it's like. You sit there and you're working on a design, you want to change the shape, and something else happens. So I've just given you 4 new ideas. And right now, I'd like to tell you exactly how I created Gaia's Eye, and hopefully you'll make one along with me too. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the supplies that I'm going to use today. I have in front of me this wonderful little bowl with a lot of cut stones, little tiny cut stones, and some snap sets in it. I know a lot of my JTV customers and viewers and students, you buy cut stones and you don't quite know what to do with them. Well, today I'm going to share this one little idea, and I'm going to show you a couple of others. All right, in addition to that, of course, I need my wire. Similar to past designs that we did today, inserting the pearl, I'm going to be using a 26 gauge round dead soft wire, and I'm also going to be using an 18 gauge round dead soft wire. Now, even though this 18 doesn't look really large, by the time we hammer it out, it's going to be large enough to be substantially used as a hairpiece or as a pendant, or as, of course, you know, my original design idea, a brooch. But you can make this with a larger gauge as well. Okay, we've already worked with a 14 gauge today. You could do this with a 12 and it would be really heavy, like a cloak pin. Something like, you know, things that you've worn in medieval times, because actually cloak pins is where this style came from, and they have been around for thousands and thousands of years. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten, measure, and cut one piece of my wire. And I'm not going to worry about making it really straight because I'll be working with the curve as I go with this design. But again, remember, this is round wire. Okay, for this particular piece, if I look at my design, I can see that I know I need about 6 inches just to make a small leaf. And I have quite a large leaf here. So let's allow, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's allow 10 inches for this leaf. All right, and this is how I would plan this. So if you don't want one as large, then you would plan it to be a little bit shorter, and you wouldn't make as many revolutions. And then the rest of this, adding the curve to it, so let's just say that that would be another 6, so 6, 10, 16. I'm going to use 18 inches just to be sure I have enough wire. So there is 1 foot plus 6, so 18 inches of 18 gauge round dead soft wire. And as before, I'm not going to bother with the stick pin part of it, this extra leaf, until my piece is done, because these are freehand made. Every single one is going to be a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, depending on how tight you decide to make your coils, or how hard you want to chase your metal and stretch it out or flatten it. They're not all going to be alike. Isn't that wonderful? Just like people, all of our jewelry pieces are totally individual. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the base pendant right here. And as I showed you on the back before, okay, this starts with a very small circle, okay, and we're going to have to make that circle large enough to contain an 8mm snap set. Now, the snap sets that I'm using today are round, and they have 6 prongs. Occasionally you can find some with 4 prongs, but I'm telling you right now, they don't hold a stone in for very long. The first thing people do when they see a piece with a stone is like, oh, look, and they push on it, wiggle, 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 and the stone comes out. Or if you just put the snap set in here and insert it and lock it in without wrapping it in, what happens is it doesn't take long for these prongs to be caught on something. Could be a scarf, could be anything, a piece of clothing, a jacket, and they get pulled out. And if you have ever lost stone out of your wedding ring, ladies, you know that that's no fun. Gentlemen, remember that a lot of people are stronger, okay, than what you're going to imagine, and they could very easily pop this stone out. So part of today's class is going to be to teach you how to properly wrap this, lock it into place. Okay, so to begin our shape, as I mentioned, I'm going to start with a round curve. And again, I have the same tools. I have my double barrel bail pliers and my 6-step rounds. And if I look at my double barrels and look at the back of my stone, okay, fitting the smaller barrel of the double barrel bails onto the back of the 8mm stone, that's about the right size. Because again, remember, when I get done making my bend, the resulting shape is going to be just that much larger than the shape I go around because of the spring in the wire. So I'm going to begin by using this and making, first let's cut that burr. Okay, double cut the wire. There you go. And let's begin by making our curve. Okay, roll the wire. Spin your hand back around, grab some more wire, and roll it again. All right, now that's a really nice little circle. Okay, it's like a perfect little circle. And the thing that we have to make sure of is this going to fit our snap set stone? Well, let's set the stone so we have something to check with. Now, as I mentioned before, I have this lovely bowl with all these pretty little things in here, and I've decided to use, let's see, there's an 8mm snap set, okay? And I have a selection of stones here. I have an amethyst color and a champagne color. Let's see, here's an orange one. Here's a ruby. I think for today's class, I'm going to use the ruby because I think it's going to show up a whole lot easier for you. And the first thing I have to do is teach you how to use the snap set. They really aren't that difficult, but they could be a little tricky. Now, because we're using an 8mm stone, we're going to be putting the snap set on the table, and we're going to be putting the stone into the setting. If we use a smaller stone, like a size 6 or smaller, I actually put the setting onto the stone. Now, the first thing I have to do is prepare my tape. I need 2 little circles of tape. And I'm just going to use what I have here with the sticky side on the outside. And I'm going to put that right there. Okay, and I'm going to prepare my second piece. Again, with the sticky on the outside. Now, I'm going to take my snap set, and the first thing I have to look at here is I have to make sure that all of my prongs are right. Okay, sometimes in shipping, they get to be a little bit wonky, okay? So let's look at this over, make sure that they're all right, nothing's bent out of place. They actually look pretty good. And now I'm going to take my snap set, okay, and I'm going to press it down onto one of my tape rolls. Now the other tape roll I'm going to put on the end of my fingertip. And this is because my fingertip is pretty powerful. Most of our fingertips are pretty powerful, and we're going to be pushing. So now I'm going to take the top of the stone, which is also known as the table, the very top of the stone, and I'm going to put this onto the roll of sticky tape on my finger. Okay? And I'm going to put this into the snap set. And I really do this at home just the same way. I really do get down alongside my bench so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Because you really don't want to be, you know, off center here. Although if you are, it's okay, but we'd prefer not to be. So I'm going to take my stone and I'm going to place it into my setting and line it up. All right, make sure that I'm centered and then just press. And you probably heard that, which is good. That's why they call it a snap set, because your stone will snap into the setting. And if you look at this properly done, when you're finished, okay, you should be able to see the heads of all of the little prongs. Each little prong should be sitting directly on top of the stone. The girdle or edge of the stone should not be down below it. It should be right there. All right. Excellent. So now that we have set our 8mm round stone, okay, I'm going to teach you how to lock this in. But we have to make sure it's the right size. And it's not. I need to make this a little bit bigger. So let's go back to our tool. As I mentioned in previous projects, the nice part about this is you can go in and you can open this up, and let's try the next size. Let's use the 6-step rounds, and I'm going to do the 3rd largest. Yeah, that's about right. And let's see how that works. And that will work, okay? Do you see that's just kind of sitting in there by itself right now? Okay, so that's perfect. So let's set that aside. We have that part done. And let's go back to our design. All right, so we've got our center done. I've got my circle. And now I'm going to make the rest of my circle. You can do this by shaping this around something. You can do this by shaping it in your hand. I'm just going to kind of shape this in my hand, doing a nice circle. You can make this as large or as small as you would like it to be. It's your piece. And this is one of the beauties of using a dead soft wire. You can actually make it do whatever you like. There we go. Okay, so I have my circle now, and I'm ready to start making my leaf. Okay, I can come in here and adjust that later too. Okay, to make the leaf, I'm going to start on the other end, and I'm going to use my chain nose pliers rather than the round to make a really tiny, 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 little tiny loop at the very end of the wire. Okay, again, if I can't go all the way, let's go back around, grab some more wire, and continue spinning so that we have a small loop. Yeah, that's not small enough for me though. So I'm going to go in here with my flat nose pliers. I'm going to tuck this in by pressing the end and just kind of tipping the wire in. Just, there we go. Okay. And now I'm going to start spinning this up. Now this is just like making a spiral or a rosette. Of course, a rosette's a spiral, but it's made with twisted square wire. So I guess this is kind of like a spiral. We're going to make this as tight as possible using our flat nose pliers. Now if we look at this like a clock, okay, when my bottom wire comes down around, let's say that that's 5 o'clock. So I'm going to come in with my flat nose pliers at 5 o'clock. I'm going to grab onto the circle and I'm going to roll it back onto itself. So as I keep coming back now, 5 o'clock and run, okay, and back to 5 o'clock and around. Okay, you can see how I'm actually working with that last wire, and we're just going to keep spinning this up all the way. So we're making a giant spiral. Now I do have to mention as you finish this up, in making the spiral really, really tight like this, you're going to see some tool marks, but because this is a dead soft wire, and you see my little tool marks kind of shining there, it is going to mar. However, remember, we still have to chase this to make it harder, and we also have to texture it to give it our own diamond cut effect. So don't worry about that. Go ahead and make this nice and tight. Okay, when you get to the point where you think you've got about enough spiral, it's time to finish off the leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my flat nose pliers up to the top, about 1/2 inch. Let's just double check that. 3/4. So let's say 3/4 from the bottom of the spiral out, and you're going to make a nice 90-degree angle. And then we're going to continue bringing it down. Okay, you see the eye starting to happen. I'm going to use my fingers to hold this. And again, placing this down on the mat, it makes it a lot easier to put the point of anything in if you place it down so that you can get your flat nose pliers on it nice and evenly. And this keeps it from jumping around. There we go. And then use your hand and complete the rest of your spiral with your fingers. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply hold on to this part. We're going to chase and texture this, our spiral eye or leaf, and make it hard enough, and then give it some texture and make it sparkle. So again, I'm going to be using the domed head on my chasing hammer. Okay, now I'm not going to touch that. I want you to see what it's doing. You see how it's stretching and it's starting to coil out? That's normal. It's perfectly okay. Now I'm going to put the chase side down against my bench block. I'm going to use my texturing hammer. We're going to give it some silver sparkle. That's pretty cool. I kind of like the 3D thing, but that's not what I'm teaching you today. Okay, so use your hands, put it all back where it needs to be, all nice and smooth and straight. I'm also grasping and holding my spiral so I can pull this even tighter with my fingers. And then I'm going to take the side that's going to hold my baby. I'm going to roll this back up, or Gaia's Tear, one or the other. Guess it depends on what you're feeling like in the day. All right, let's make that round. Okay, and now, of course, I have to chase and texture this side as well. I love the way this sparkles, I really do. That crosshatch diamond design is like my very favorite for using on smaller wires. Remember, this is just an 18 gauge. This is a smaller wire, and it just gives it such a great, great texture, a great shine. Okay, so enough about that. I'm shaping this in. There we go. And it's not going to be exact. No two handmade pieces ever are. Heck, I'm lucky if my earrings match. Okay, here we go. Perfect, or as close as I'm going to get. All right, so now let's attach our snap set. And this is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the first things people do when they see a piece of cut stone jewelry is they have to touch it. I'm guilty too. Okay, probably you are too. You just want to touch the stone. It's so pretty, I have to touch it. Is it real? But by doing that a lot, especially if you sell your work or if you have children that are going to be touching grandma's brooch, they're going to loosen the stone. So it's very important that after we lock this in, that we wrap it in. And we're going to be using 26 gauge round dead soft wire to do this. Now, as I mentioned in the earlier project, you can also use a 26 gauge round half hard. But remember that the more you kink a half hard wire in the same place, the easier it's going to be to snap. So if you can, use a dead soft. Okay, I am going to just clean this wire. I mean, it's a natural for me to want to straighten it. Basically, I just need to clean it. And I'm going to cut a piece about 6 inches long. And let's cut that in half and make 2 pieces, each 3 inches long. Now again, this might be just a little bit more than what you need, but it's 26 gauge wire. It's not that expensive, and I would prefer that you have a little bit more than not enough the first time around. Okay, so I have my 2 3-inch pieces, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place these one on each side of a prong on my snap set, and bring them all the way through and out the other side. I have a wire coming out on each side of that prong right there, okay? And it's going straight through so that you can see it on the other side. Okay, so after we have both of these wires, each one surrounding a prong and going under the other 2, because we have a 6-prong piece here, okay, I'm going to take this down and fold my wires under on one side. Okay, just like that. Now they're folded on one side. I'm going to place this so that my stone is going to sit inside my little circle that I made. This is where my cameramen are going to hate my life, but okay, and I have to wrap these around this circle. So let's start over here with the longer ones. If I pull this through, because I have anchored this here, it's not going to go any farther. So let's pull that through, and let's lock this one around here just to get us started. Now, sometimes I do use my tools, but today I think I'm using them more because it's easier for you to see what I'm doing and my fingers aren't in the way. But the whole idea is to wind this wire, tease it around. Remember, we don't want to kink it. We're going to come around here. I would say a minimum of 3 full times. So I have 1, 2 full now, 2.5 including coming it on. So this would make 3. All right. When I was putting on the pink pearl on the twining vines, okay, we went around at least 3 times. I brought it up, we pulled it, and then I trimmed it. And then I used my chain nose pliers to round that end into the setting. Just like that. This is such a fine wire that it's nothing to spread this out and make it meld with the rest. You can't even feel the end, which is the whole purpose. Okay, so now we have that side locked in. We've got 1 wire down. This one's still gonna give us some trouble, so let's lock the other side in here. I'm gonna turn this around back side now so you can see. There we go. There's our extra wire right here. Okay, and I think, all right, I think I'm gonna lock this all in together here. I know I didn't do that on the last one, but let's bring this one around the top here. Let's tie this teardrop closer to the eye on this piece. Just like before, wrap the wire around 3 times, trim, and then use chain nose pliers to round the wire end in so there are no sharp edges. All right, so we have 1 wire in. We have the stone locked in on 2 different sides, okay? Right there and right there. So now I have to lock both of the other sides in right here, and I have to wrap wire around that setting in order to stabilize it. So I'm going to take the shortest of these 2 wires and tell you first, I'm going to put some extra eyes on. I'm working with this really small wire, and the lights can do a number on your eyes. Okay, these optivisors, these are 1.75, which is good. I'm actually going to put them on with my glasses. So, bye, see you later. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to take one of these 2 wires. I'm going to wrap it the same as I did before around the wire that is holding the stone in place. Kind of like sewing. I don't sew, by the way, but this is like sewing with wire. I can sew on a button, so I guess this is pretty close. All right. Now, at this one, I'm going to end this by cutting this one off short, and I'm going to tuck this up inside so that it's actually going around the wire between the snap set and the anchor wire itself. There we go. Now, I have 1 more wire left, okay? And this wire I'm going to have to use to stabilize my stone in its setting, as I promised you before. So I'm going to grab the end of this wire with my chain nose pliers. I'm going to wrap this around the stone in the snap set. Now this is going just underneath the girdle, so it's just underneath the prongs. And wrap that around nice and tight. Okay, and this is just going to stabilize the stones. The prongs holding it in. And then we're going to lock this wire around the prong or around the wire. Now, if you don't like working with a 26 gauge wire, I can tell you that often I have used a 20 gauge half round to do this same thing, which you probably saw me do in some of my ring designs. Sometimes you need your needle nose chain nose pliers and an extra set or two of eyes to make this happen. There we go. All right, nice, very nice. All right, so now, sorry, there we go. Okay, let's finish this up. It looks pretty good. I would like to texture this side again a lot. I really like it with the ruby in it. I'm glad I chose the ruby. And let me firm up the back of this a little bit more. If you find yours doing the same thing, well, it's still a little bit laxy here, go ahead and firm it up some more. Careful your stone though. Oh, much better. Much, much better. And again, as we have with the others, you see how this is like perfectly flat, or pretty darn close to perfectly flat, horizontal. We have to put a slight curve into it. As you saw with the example of how to wear it either in your hair or over a stole, you have to have like a bulk under it. So in order to do that, you can use your hands. You can use, I have my marker pen here. I'm going to use this. And just kind of hold that with my hand and just something to shape over, just to give me a general idea. You can use a ring mandrel if you want. Pens work well, tools. Here we go. Okay, and let's bring that back up. This is kind of like we gave our leaves life in twining vines. Well, we're doing the same type of thing here. Here we go. I know I got carried away. An eye and a leaf and, you know, mother of the universe and leader of life and all that good stuff. It all goes together. Okay. And there we have that nice, like, arch that I need. Okay. You see that arch? And now I can measure and make the stick pin that I need. Similar to what we did before in one of our other designs, I'm going to use my ruler and measure it from where my pin will go in to where my pin will come out. And let's see. Again, I like to have a minimum of 1/2 inch at the end. So coming up through here, that would say that I would need a minimum of 3 1/4 inches. So let's add on for the leaf. And again, let's go to 5 1/2 inches, okay? My finished piece here is 3 inches. Take that back. It's 2 7/8. 3 inches. And you need a pin to be approximately 1.5 inches longer. So I'm going to make my wire about 5 inches long. So let's take another piece and straighten, measure, and cut. This is again the 18 gauge round dead soft. And I'm going to cut one piece. Yeah, I'm going to make it 6 inches because I think I'd like to put an eye in the center. Again, double cut the end. You know, as an intermediate wire artist, basically all I'm doing is I'm sharing some techniques with you. You should already know how to use a lot of your skills and a lot of your tools, and you know which tool to pick up for which job. So I'm just going to give you some ideas and some techniques and, you know, make these pieces with me and then take them and run with them, really. See what you can come up with. Okay, ready to make my extra piece here. And I'm going to start with my chain nose pliers on the very end. Let's make a little tiny eye, a little tiny circle, similar to what we did before. And then using my flat nose pliers, let's go ahead and round this up. Okay, and let's come up here, make a leaf or another eye. Give it some shape. Oh, look, that looks like the hook we made on the first one too. I didn't think of that. Okay, finish this off by hand. And it's time to texture and chase this. Remember to chase it first and not to texture the part that's going to be going through the fabric because we don't want to tear things. All right, so now we have a textured leaf. I'm going to make this point a little more defined, only because I want to. There we go. And I believe this should fit right down in here, like our other. Oh, let's go through this way. I like that better. Perfect. Okay, so the last thing that remains, you guessed it, let's cut and file the end of our pin. Now this one, I'm going to show you a different way. Instead of making the pin on an angle, let's keep this one flat. Let's pound it out almost like a paddle, okay, which is going to teach you another technique. And let's say that this one can be used more easily with this type of a stick as a hairpiece or to go into a loose weave. Now to do that, I'm going to really, really pound the end of this and have it spread out. Okay, now do you see how that kind of really spread that out as compared to the rest? It looks more like a paddle. Okay, and at the very end, I'm just going to use my coarse sharpening stone across the edge just to get the burrs off. And then the fine side to kind of polish it. Okay, so slipping this through, all right, we have just finished making Gaia's eye. We've learned to incorporate our snap set stone, locking in and wrapping it in. We've learned how to make a larger version of our leaf link, and we've learned that we can also wear this as a hairpiece, as well as using it as a stole or scarf brooch. I hope you've enjoyed this project as much as I have. For more information about the supplies and techniques used, visit jewelschool.com. And if you have a question or a challenge, just send me an email, dale@jtv.com. You know, I've had a really good time today in Jewel School. I hope you did. Let's review a little bit of what we've learned today. We have learned how to make pins and brooches that can easily convert into earrings, pendants, and jewelry for your hair. We've also learned, most importantly, how to chase, how to texture, how to make sharp points, and how to attach precious gemstones and pearls to any of our wire jewelry designs. It's an awful lot for one day. I will see you here next time in Jewel School.